Okay, so according to the script I'm reading on this screen right here, I'm meant to come up with something amusing to say for an intro.
1 day later.
But I got fuck all. So let's do this shit. Today I'm going to take you guys through the workflow that I'll utilize if I want to use Lightroom and Photoshop to edit a marine animal image. And whilst I'll be using an image of a shark for this one today, it's the exact same workflow that I'd use for any other marine animal image that I've shot with a drone. Quick reminder, if you haven't watched this video here where I cover my editing workflow in Lightroom only, then I highly recommend that you go and watch that one first and then come back here and finish watching this one. Now, just to be clear, I don't actually use this workflow all the time. I'd say about 3/4 of my marine animal images that get posted to my socials are done in Lightroom alone, but every now and then I'll get an image and I just can't get it to look quite the way that I want it to look with the tools that I've got in Lightroom. And the image I'm going to use today is a very good example of that. This hammerhead shot is one that I shot a few years ago now. It's a pretty good image to start with. It's got a really nice clean silhouette, but there is a hell of a lot of stuff on the surface of the water that needs cleaning up, as well as a few larger bits of seaweed that we need to get rid of as well. This green hue of the water just isn't doing it for me as well. And the tools in Lightroom alone just don't give me the adjustment that I need to be able to get the hue of that water to where I want it. So if necessary, I will make a few quick adjustments in Lightroom first. It's the same adjustments that I've made in previous videos. This will just give me a good base image to start the edit with before we send it to Photoshop. I've already made a copy of this one with those adjustments made. You can see them over here. It's just stuff in the basics menu, but that's what I've done. So we've just taken it from there to there. It's nothing that drastic, as you can see, but it just needed to be brightened up a little bit. So what we'll do from here, we'll go up to Photo, Edit in, and Edit in Adobe Photoshop. I've already opened this one in Photoshop, so I'm not going to worry about clicking on it. What this does is it will create a copy of the image that then gets opened in Photoshop, and that's what we're working on. And this is what should come up. It should open it up in Photoshop for you like this. I'll quickly point out that your version of Photoshop might look different to this. If it looks like completely drastically different, just make sure, go up to Window, Workspaces, and just make sure you're in the photography workspace. The default workstation for photography should look something like what has come up here, hopefully. So first thing that we'll do here is over in the layers part here, this is the image we're working on. I'll just tick the little unlock thing. First thing I'll actually do is I'll hold Alt, I'll click and hold on that layer and I'll drag it down and I'll release it. And what we're doing is we're just creating a copy of that layer. I create a copy of it just to basically cover my ass if I fuck something up completely. I started doing that when I was first learning Photoshop and it came in super handy a hell of a lot, and it's just become a habit now. So it's just what I do. And once we've created that, we click this little eyeball beside it. That just disables the layer and makes it invisible. So this top layer, we're going to double click on the word layer, and it will let us rename it, and we're just going to rename that water. I'll just cover a couple of keyboard shortcuts that are super useful and you'll use them all the time when you're in Photoshop. First one is if you hold the space bar, you'll notice the icon changes to this little hand. If you click, hold, and then drag around, it will just let you maneuver around the image like that. Second one, and I use this all the time, if you hold Control and the space bar, see it then turns into the little magnifying glass with plus on it. If you click and hold and then drag across to the right, it will zoom in. Drag across to the left, it will zoom out. Zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. You can see how now, if I just hold the space bar, why it is very useful. So it lets you drag around to wherever you want to be on the image when you're zoomed in. This is called a scrubby zoom. And if you hold the Control and space bar, and when you click and drag, it starts drawing a box and it doesn't just neatly zoom in and out like mine was then. You're going to have to go to Google and you'll have to Google how to enable scrubby zoom in Photoshop. I can't remember how you enable it and disable it by default, to be honest. The last shortcut is simply if you hold Control and press 0, it will fill the screen with the image like that. So the first thing we need to do is the object removal to get rid of all of this crap floating on the surface of the water and also those few bits of seaweed that were sitting further down on the ocean floor. So we're going to come over to the left side here where all the toolbars are, and we are going to look for the spot healing brush tool, this one here. We're going to click on that, and just to double check, we're going to go all these options up the top here. This one here, we're just going to click on that arrow beside it. It's going to stay open for me. And we just want to make sure the hardness is around 75% and the spacing around 25. Think of hardness as like feathering. So if you've got it at 100% hardness, it's going to have a blunt edge, like an obvious blunt edge. It doesn't have a feathered edge at all. Spacing I won't bother explaining. Just put it at 25%. We'll leave it at that. Now, when you've got this tool selected, your bracket keys on the keyboard, so your left bracket and your right bracket, they will adjust the size of the brush. So right bracket makes it bigger, left bracket makes it smaller. And then it is simply a case of zooming in on the image. You want to keep your brush as small as possible, but also make sure that it is going to encompass the whole area of the thing that you're trying to move. So I'd keep it smaller for these smaller ones, and you literally just click on them and it will remove them for you. Longer ones like that, you can click and drag it. So we can go click, drag across it, release it, and it's gone. Happy days. So the first thing I will do is I'll go through the entire image and I will remove all of these smaller bits of gunk. The bigger stuff though, like these bits of seaweed mainly, I'll leave them for a second run after I've done all the smaller bits. The reason being is that when you spot heal something, what it's doing is it's looking for a part of the image somewhere else that is similar to the section that you're trying to heal, and it's just copying pixels basically. And if you start trying to remove the big bits first, what will happen is it will often replace that area of the image with a section that had some of those small spots in it, because it goes, well, there's no big bits of shit there, and that's all we're trying to get rid of, so we'll just shove these ones here. And you just create yourself more work, because then you've created more little spots of shit on the water surface to get rid of. Now, getting rid of all these small ones is going to take a hell of a lot of time, so I'll speed this part of the video up. We'll get the little ones out of the way, and then we'll move on to the big ones. All right, so that's gotten the bulk of the spot removal done. There's still a few little bits that we have to finish up though. So the first one is that I've left the shark until the very end, just because I want to get right in on the shark. Especially, see there's a few spots here. So like right on the silhouette, right near the edge of the silhouette in a few spots. We want to make sure that we're zoomed right in on those ones, just so we're doing the most efficient job that we can of getting the spot removal correct and hopefully not disturbing the silhouette of the shark while we do it. All right, so we've gotten all the cleaning up done around the shark. Now, there's still a few other things that we've got to clean up as well. Now, bigger spots like this, you can try the spot healing brush first. Sometimes it works. We'll have a go. And it's actually done a really good job. It's done a good job there. It's going to go and make a liar of me now, but it's all right. I'll show you the other technique in a minute. But we'll keep trying the brush. It's fine. It's fine. This bigger one here might test it. That actually looks fine as well. Or maybe not. No, that still kind of stands out to me. Things like that, what we're going to do is we're going to make a selection there and we'll do what is called a content-aware fill. So we're going to go up to our tools over here and we're going to find this one here, the lasso tool. And all we're going to do is we're going to come over to the thing we want to cut out and we're going to loosely draw around it. So you just click and hold and just draw around it. Just like this. You got to make sure that you join back up to the spot where you started though to complete the selection. And then you'll get these marching ants here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go up to Edit, Content Aware Fill. And this will bring up our Content Aware Fill window. The preview window here is just showing the image, how it's going to look with what we've drawn out of it. And that actually looks like it's done a pretty good job straight away. Photoshop normally does a really, really good job of knowing which area of the image to look for other pixels to content aware fill a thing. So if the preview looks pretty good, this looks pretty sweet to me, I'm happy with that. Section here where it says output to, we're just going to go to output to current layer. Click OK, then we'll go up to select and just hit deselect to get rid of that selection, and boom, there you go. We'll go over to this piece here. We'll go back to our spot healing brush and we'll see if that does the job over here first. It's left a little bit because of that little bit there. See what I mean about earlier, how it'll grab pixels from somewhere else in the image that it thinks will work. And if you haven't gotten rid of all the smaller stuff first, it'll start trying to replicate all that smaller stuff. But the spot healing brush has done a really good job there. But what we are going to do is we're going to go back to down here. See this section all here? You can actually see distinctively there. That is my Phantom 4. And that is the reflection of the drone on the surface of the water, as well as you can see there's these other oddly discolored sections through here. That is all a reflection of the drone on the surface of the water. And once again, we're just going to quickly kind of roughly draw around that area like that. Going to go to Edit, Content Aware Fill. It'll bring up our Content Aware Fill. It's done an amazing job once again of deciding which pixels to use to fill that area. Make sure it's on output to current layer, click OK. Go to select, deselect. It's filled that one beautifully for us. Now, the last bit of this image that I've left about the cleaning up is this section up in the top corner here, where all this really ugly glare is. The glare, not only is it bringing out every single little speck of anything that was on the surface of the water, notice how it's also shifted the hue of the water as well, and it gives it this cloudy sort of just shit look, for lack of a better way to put it. So what I will normally do here is I'll grab the spot healing brush again, but I'm not going to worry about trying to get rid of every single little speck. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go through it and I'll just get rid of all the bigger specks of stuff. So we can try like the really big bright spots. We can hammer them in a rather aggressive way, because it doesn't matter if they get replaced with like a heap of smaller specks, because that's still better than nothing. Now I know that the final crop that I'm going to go with for this image, a lot of that top corner it's not going to be in the frame, so it doesn't really matter. But there's a few different ways you can approach cleaning this sort of stuff up. You can try and hope and pray. You can use the spot healing brush tool. Sometimes it'll do a good job. And you just kind of do it bit by bit and attack it and kind of just keep shifting over, keep cutting into it. But usually you'll get to a point where it'll just start to not work. It'll just look like it's doing fuck all. I must say, this is actually going a bit better than what I was expecting it to. What I would usually do, it'll get to a point where it won't be working as well. And so I'll go back to trying to do a content aware fill. Do a pretty big broad area. We'll give it a go. Edit, content aware fill. It actually doesn't look too bad. But see, you can't get rid of, it's just got that glary, hazy look still. But it is getting rid of most of those annoying little specks for us. So we're still going to go current layer, okay, select, deselect it. And see, it's gotten rid of the majority of all the little specks of shit for us. So now it's just a matter of quickly going in, cropping in again, and I'll just do this really, really roughly because I know that I'm not actually going to bother having that top section in the image. And we'll leave it at that just for this tutorial, because as I said, I know that most of that top ugly stuff is going to get cropped out in the final image, so that's okay. That's the first big hurdle done. Happy days. If you've gotten this far and haven't gone insane yet, that's probably the hardest bit of having to clean up an image like this. So from here, the next step is going to be working on our shark. We want to isolate the shark so we can treat the shark differently to how we treat the water. We want to be able to work on the two things individually apart from each other. So we're going to go over to our tools again, and we're going to look for, I've got to remember where it is. We're going to look for the object selection tool. There you are, object selection tool. You'll find that if you've got a good clean silhouette like this, Photoshop will have already decided, hey, that's the subject of the image. So if you can run the cursor over it and it highlights it like this, then happy days. I'm going to assume that the image you're working on is going to automatically select like this. If it doesn't, then it becomes a lot harder and you've got to create a mask yourself, and that's outside of the scope of what we're doing today. I'll do another video about that at some point in time. I'm yet to have a ocean critter image like this where Photoshop hasn't done a pretty awesome job of selecting it all by itself. So I think if you've got a good image to start with a clean silhouette, which is why I stressed those things in the first video, it does a lot of the hard work for you. So you'll just hover over him and you'll click it, and it's going to automatically select that subject for us. And we're just going to go up the top here and we're going to click on select and mask. And this is going to bring up our select and mask dialog box, which is where we refine the mask to get it exactly how we want it. First thing we're going to do is we're over here in the view mode, You'll see there's different ways of viewing the mask that we've created with an overlay on black, on white, black and white, so on and so forth. I'm going to leave it at marching ants for now. We'll zoom right in so we can have a proper look at it. And it's done a pretty good job of selecting it. But notice we've got a few spots across the front edges of his pectoral fins, haven't quite been selected properly. And it's actually done a pretty good job of the tail. That's all good. Photoshop's done 99% of the work for us. So all we're going to do is we've got a few tools over on the side here. Quick selection, refine the edge. We want the brush tool. Let's select the brush tool. And all we're going to do, see how it's got a little plus sign? If you click and hold and just paint, and we're pretty much just pushing that line. We just want to push that marching ant line to where we want it. I'm just going to refine it like that. Now, if you accidentally go too far and say we go, oh, we paint too far out of there. If you hold Alt, see how the little plus that's in the middle of the circle turns to a minus. That means you're, instead of adding to the mask, you're removing from the mask. So you can just paint it back out just like that. And once again, the bracket keys will give you a bigger or a smaller brush head, but you only need to work with something pretty small. With what we're doing, the bigger you go. If you go too big, it starts to get very easy to go out of bounds, just like that. So we keep it small. We'll keep refining it, the edge of that mask. And the amount of time you have to spend doing this is going to be very dependent on how well Photoshop has done the job for you of making this mask. But you do want to take your time and go around it, zoom right in, and make sure that that marching ant line is right on the outline of your shark. The better the job of actually masking the shark, the much better the result is in the long run. Now, for what I'm doing today with this tutorial, I would say that is good enough. I would usually spend a lot of time zooming right in, and I mean right in, and making sure that I've got that mask right on the edge of where you can see the color change. Now, as you'll notice too, once you crop right in, there's not a big distinction between, it's like, well, where does the shark end and where does the water begin? It can get really tricky to gauge at times. It's kind of just an experience thing, and you start to get a really good idea of what's what after you've done it a few times. You're just looking for that distinct color change in the pixels pretty much. I mean, here's a good example. See, these are gray still. These pixels here, they're still gray. They're still shark. The water is obviously greens and your hues of green. So even here, see, that's all shark. I'm not going to stress about that at the moment for this tutorial. Otherwise, this is going to take 1.5 million years. So once you've got your selection all good, and then we're going to play with a couple of the sliders down here. We want to make sure that we are on color aware and not object aware. In my experience, the color aware option works a lot better with these kinds of images than what object aware does. Edge detection, I find it to be more of a hindrance than help. The only thing we want to do is we want to feather it ever so slightly by 1 pixel. We don't need to feather this mask heavily. Contrast, put it to 25%. And this last one here, decontaminate colors, we want to enable that, and we're going to put that at 25% as well. These options here, feathering it by 1 pixel, putting our contrast at 25%, and decontaminating the colors at 25%, those settings I use 99.9% of the time when I do the masks for these images. I've found those to be the best settings that work reliably every time. So we've got all that. That's happy days. So what we're going to do is output to. We want to make sure that we are outputting to a new layer with a layer mask. That one's very, very important. Click OK. And you're going to go, what the fuck happened? Don't stress too much. Go to full screen again. Re-enable our water layer. And then the one that we just created called water copy, we're just going to rename that shark. You can enable and disable that layer, and it looks like we've done absolutely fuck all. But don't stress, we will work with the shark later on. Deselect him for now. We'll go back to the water layer, so make sure you click that layer. That's the layer that we want to be working on at the moment, because now we get to the part where we can start actually editing the color palette of the image. From there, we are going to go up to our adjustments up here. And we're going to look for one called selective color. We'll click that and you'll see that has created a new layer above the water one called selective color. And we've brought up these properties here. If for some reason this properties window doesn't appear, you should have in the sidebar here this little icon, click that, and that will bring up the properties for that adjustment. Now, selective color is fucking amazing basically, and it's the main reason why I'll bring these images to Photoshop, because it gives you so much scope to push and pull a color palette and get particular colors exactly where you want them. The best way to know what to do with this when you're doing these edits is good old fuck about and find out. So I will come in here, I will look at the image and I'll go, right, that's pretty fucking green looking. So the first one I'm going to go to is green, and I'll just shift sliders around and I'll see what it does. If you want to reset it back to 0, just double click on the word cyan. Well, we grab the magenta, fucking push that wherever we want, see what it does. Grab the yellow, slide it around, do whatever the fuck we want. You go full extreme with these and you can make the colors do whatever the fuck you want. And you can do that to each individual color. So you're starting to see why it's such a powerful tool. We'll just reset it. Now, I've already gone through this image and done the edit, so I knew where I ended up with sliders just to make the tutorial a bit quicker. So I'll just quickly punch in the figures that I'd already figured out with this one. So the greens, what have I done there? I grabbed the magenta and we went plus 100 with it, and the yellows, I went minus 100. I'm trying to push that green to blue. I want a nice blue color palette out of it. And I just could not achieve it properly in Lightroom because of the limited options that you've got with color manipulation. And so we'll then go to the cyan, punch it full of cyan that way, makes it a bit more blue. Magenta, where were we? We've gone, so we slide it that way, slide it that way. We want it to be bluer, so I ended up around there. See, once again, want it blue, drag all that yellow out of it. We've gotten it kind of blue. Most of the time you can get the overall effect that you want out of just one layer of selective color. Sometimes though, you might want it to go a little bit further. And this image was one that I needed it to go even further still. Still not quite there yet. That color isn't quite what I want it to be yet. What I'll do, make sure that selective color layer is selected. I'll go up to the adjustments panel. I'll click selective color again. If you see here, we have now created another layer called selective color 2, and it's put it on top of selective color 1, and that is important. So I want to tweak this color palette further than what it is. So I have to have my next hit of selective color sitting above the first hit for it to work. The second one, what have I done? Cyans, I've tweaked them a little bit with the yellows. Because once again, we put more yellow into it, it gets bluer. So I only went a little bit the second time around. Because I've made it look blue now, I've actually been able to go to the blue channel and tweak the blues a bit. Slide it around back and forth. You can kind of see what it's doing. Settled around about 45. So that's where I ended up with this. For this particular image, it can take a long time of playing around with the sliders to get the colors where you want them. There's no right or wrong way to go about it. I've gotten better at it over time as to knowing what I'm going to have to adjust to achieve the look I want. Definitely don't be afraid to just go into each of those individual colors and just yank sliders around and just keep fucking about with it until you get the colors to look the way that you want them to look. So now that we've gotten that watercolor palette where we want it, it's all beautiful. Our little sharky friend, he's not so beautiful. It's kind of blue looking. We don't want that. Looks like shit, doesn't it? This is what we created the shark layer for. So we're going to come back over into our layers panel. We're going to click the shark one, make sure that is the active one. We had it turned off before, so we're just going to enable that one again. Now you'll see that he actually goes green, like the original image was, which still looks like shit. We don't want that. So we want to come up into our adjustments and we want to find the black and white adjustment. We'll click that, and what the fuck just happened? It's gone all black and white. We just did all that fucking color work and we fucked it. Well, we haven't fucked it, just we're getting there. On that black and white layer, we are going to right click. We're going to find the option called Create Clipping Mask. Click that. So what did we just do? A clipping mask attaches an adjustment to a specific layer, and it's the layer just beneath it. And only that layer. I hope, like, fuck, that makes sense. If it doesn't, don't stress, just keep following along and you'll get the result you want. So what we'll do after we've done that, we'll zoom in a little bit just so we can get a better look at him. We'll go to the preset section and you'll see there's a whole heap of different options here. And if you start clicking through them, we'll just grab a few of them randomly. So they're changing the look of the shark. Now, the one that you want to use is going to be dependent on your particular image. I find usually that I'll be using a different one of these presets for each image. Like, it varies. It really does depend on which one sort of works best with your own edit, and that will be up to you to decide. Fuck, which one did I say was okay? Darker? So what I'll do with this one, even though not like they're either looking too light or too dark, but I'll get one that's close enough. So we'll go with the darker preset. It's not too bad. Having the shark completely black and white like that and completely losing all of the color cast from the water, it doesn't look quite right. We do actually want a little bit of that original color cast there, but just not fucking all of it. So what we can do about that is let's come over to our layers panel, make sure the black and white filter layer is the one selected, and we'll just go up to the opacity. So if we turn the opacity all the way down, it's like the filter's not even there. By adjusting the opacity, we can adjust the amount of that original color cast that we want to seep through it. So I usually find somewhere from 70 to 80% is a pretty happy medium. So if we put it there, if we disable that shark layer, because the clipping mask is attached to it, it will disable that as well automatically. And go like through before and after. That's not too bad at 75. I think I'm happy enough with that at 75% for this one. But I would like the shark to be a little bit darker overall. So we'll fix that by not making another adjustment. We'll come up to, we're going to use curves adjustment. It'll be quick and easy. Once again, come down to the layers panel, right click on that curves adjustment, and you're going to create a clipping mask as well, because we only want it affecting our shark layer. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab it in the middle and just drag it all down a little bit. I like that. Can hide those. That's pretty much all we want to be able to do in Photoshop. I really don't like that spec. That's kind of annoying. So just remember, when you're doing the final review on it, if you find specks or anything else in the water that you're not happy with and you want to change it, you've just got to make sure that we've got that water layer selected and not the shark one. Because we've been working on the shark one, so you're going to have one of those layers selected. And working on them is going to do fuck all, because we want to be cutting bits out of the water. So make sure your water layer is selected. Come back over. Make sure you've got your spot healing brush. And we can just work on getting rid of any other bits of shit that we spot, basically. How far you want to go with that process is completely up to you. I have a tendency to get quite aggressive with it, and I will take my time and go through the whole image, and I'll get rid of every single little speck of annoying shit in it. Mainly because I know from experience, older edits that I've done and I've then printed them later on, I look at the printed copy up close and you can, once you see it, you know it's there, you can't unsee it. And every time you see that photo, it's like, oh, there's that. Oh, I wish that wasn't there. And it just does my fucking head in. I'm not going to bother with this one anymore for today, just for the sake of the tutorial. But I mean, if I get right in there and have a look, see, there's still little bits everywhere that I can see that I would normally get rid of. But once you've got it to this point where you're happy with it, you want to be able to go back to Lightroom to finish it off. How do we take it back to Lightroom? All we have to do is go up to File and just click Save. Not Save As, just Save. You'll see this little dialog come up in the top. Sometimes it'll take a while if you've done a lot of work, but once that disappears, you close Photoshop. Lightroom should have already been open. See what's happened? It's in Photoshop magically. Now remember, I was explaining at the start that we're not working on the original image in Photoshop. It's creating a copy and it sends that to Photoshop, and that's what we're fucking around with and hacking up. By opening it in Photoshop from Lightroom, it dynamically links the two programs. So whenever you save in Photoshop, it automatically updates the copy in Lightroom. So from here, I will just edit this image exactly like I would do any other ocean critter image in Lightroom. It's the exact same workflow that I've covered in the previous video. So we won't waste our time with that editing process. I've already done it. There's a copy of it here. We'll jump into that copy and I'll just quickly show you guys what I did to achieve that end result. So here's the final edit here, kind of roughly. So basics, that's all I've done there. Just a few little tweaks there. Tone curve, a few small tweaks in the tone curve. HSL color, I haven't had to do much because we did most of the color work in Photoshop. So we go before and after. It's just to brighten the colors up a little bit more than anything with that one. A little bit of sharpening. Calibration panel, only very minor tweaks, but that's about it. And the rest of it is masking. So if we go into the masking panel, first thing I've done with the masking is turn it off. I've just accentuated the shadow underneath the shark a bit. So I've just used a brush, roughly painted that shadow. And then you can see we've just made some adjustments to darken that and taken the color out of it as well. The second one has just been a great big radial filter just to create a source of light effectively in the image. Turn it on and off. Makes quite a big difference to it. Once again, covered in the other video. Mask 3 and Mask 4 are just a couple of radial gradients. Just a couple of linear gradients to darken the bottom part of the image. And then the fifth one has been to mask the shark, just to highlight him a little bit more. So there's been nothing too major done there. Actually, in hindsight, looking at it now, I might have gone a bit too bright. I might drop that. I think that's a bit better. And so that's it, guys. That's the workflow that I'll use when editing these sorts of images in Lightroom and Photoshop. This example is what I'd call a pretty basic edit in Photoshop, and there's definitely a lot of other tools within that program that you can use when doing these sorts of edits. Things like perspective warping to correct silhouette distortion, more complex object removal and content-aware filling and stuff like that, or even more editing tricks like luminosity masking or recoloring an image with gradient maps, or dodging and burning and all sorts of other things like that. But those are more complex processes and I wanted to keep this one as simple as possible. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in content about any of those things or even anything that we've covered in this one today. As usual, I do my best to help out where I can. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If so, a like and a subscribe is always appreciated. And it's also the best indicator for me to know if you guys are actually interested in this sort of content or not. If this has helped you to edit an image and you throw it up on socials, then be sure to give me a tag, guys, because I'd love to see the work that you're doing. For now, we are done, out of here, and I'll see you next Tuesday.